Hello, everyone, and welcome to our monthly talk. We have changed our platform, and now we're on StreamYard. So, those of you who are on Facebook and on YouTube can watch. We want to encourage you to join us now for this incredibly and extremely important conversation. As you know, our encouragement is for you to not only watch but to share. And so tonight we have our favorite doctor, our 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 personal church therapist, and someone who's just been amazing. The topic tonight is going to be incredible. So I'm going to turn it over now to our executive pastor and to our favorite therapist, and we're going to let and he'll handle everything else. You guys be blessed, and we'll definitely talk back later.
All right. We definitely want to thank God for Bishop Guns for allowing us to have this time to bring this type of ministry to the forefront. Dr. Wilson mentioned earlier about have you seen increase in persons coming to you? And of course, you said yes, due to the pandemic and the civil unrest taking place, and even the election time. And I thought it was interesting that I think it's interesting that people would actually understand the importance of seeking out counseling and being able to come. And I think that says a lot about individuals who you're providing your services to. So on behalf of Bishop Guns and the St. Paul family, we thank you for giving us your services, and it's really been a blessing, and we look forward to tonight. So I'm not going to take up much more time. I'm going to turn it over to you now. Please minister to us and help us, Dr. Wilson.
The pressure's on. No, it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure being able to come and working with you guys. You guys have been awesome. Just embracing mental health, and that's something that's just a passion of mine. And like I said, you never know how wide range of how mental health, how much it impacts people. But definitely there in 2020, it really, I want to say, it just blew the top off. And so now you're hearing more and more about mental health, which I'm excited about, because it's about time, because it's been such a stigma that nobody wanted to talk about, but yet we were suffering in silence. And which brings me to my topic tonight, which is one of the things that we identify with, and we especially people of color, all over the world. I can't just say just in the United States. And we've seen that when George Floyd was really just murdered in front of us, and just how it impact just the world. But this is something that when we see things like that, it resonates with us, even though it does not affect us directly, but how much it resonates. So I want to talk about race trauma, which is a real thing, and that has been coined since 2007, although we haven't really, again, that stigma. And so we go through it and don't even realize it. So I'm really excited about tonight's topic.
All right. Well, it's on you. I know you have a powerful presentation. So just lead us. Take your time and just walk
All
us
right.
through it.
I certainly will. Let me share my screen. Let me see if I can get this on there. Share screen. Uh-oh.
And while she's doing that,
Okay, there you
if you're watching, please go ahead and invite others. This is a very important topic for us tonight, so we're really excited, Dr. Wilson.
go. Okay, can you see this?
Not yet.
Can you see it now?
No, ma'am.
Uh-oh. Instead of sharing. Says it's sharing.
The one thing about technology, it tends to do what it wants to do, right?
Yes.
Listen, it's
Okay.
no problem.
I think this should be it. Okay, can you see that now?
No, still can't.
Uh-oh. Ever in the show. It says that it is sharing.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah, it hasn't come up yet. So, um,
okay. Well, I'm gonna just go on. The show must go
okay.
on.
Yeah, and we'll make it available. We'll make it available on our
Okay.
social media pages.
Okay.
All right.
Oh my leg. Keep it going. Okay. So I wanted to be able to talk about race trauma and just how much it really impacts us today, especially again with people of color. And pull this up for myself. And it's called race-based trauma, and we identify it in many different ways. And so we have what's called individualized trauma, um, where we are exposed to a lot of racial abuse. It can be through the media, it can be through racial bias, it could be through racism. And so I want to tell you about a case study. It's I changed the name, of course, to protect the innocent. And so it works something like this. Let's say that you're a lower middle class Black woman and you work in a retail store and you've been there for several years. Well, however, like other employees, she is denied time off. So all of her coworkers, all of her other coworkers can get time off. When she asks for time off, she's denied. And she's given like many medium assignments, like mopping. Everybody else get to do things that would promote her to other um, the assistant manager, things of that manner. But she's have to do like getting all the clothes back on the floor. She has to do the mopping, the cleaning up, things of that nature. And she's constantly being yelled at and spoken to by her store manager, just demeaning, even in front of her coworkers. Um, she's required to follow other Black customers around the store. And she's made a number of complaints through a proper organizational channel as a result. And her and so she was like, I had it. You're making me do things I don't want to do. I don't get to do what other coworkers are doing. I'm not being treated like other coworkers. And so she went through HR to make her complaint. And now her store manager is retaliating. But because she needs the job, she has to endure the mistreatment and the threats of determination. And then, of course, she was fired and then filed a lawsuit. So, what I'm talking about is not something that's unusual. And sometimes that this is something that everybody may have gone through, or we went for housing and trying to get housing and then get turned down, or they price your home lower than it was, or you in a neighborhood that's being gentrified. And so this is what we talk about when we mean a racial trauma. It can affect every aspect of your life, because we almost on that edge. And when we just came off the base of the trial with Chevin about George Floyd, a lot of us was on edge. I've heard some people say, well, I can't watch it, and some people say, I can't, that's all I do is look at it. But it does something to us. And that's what I'm talking about. When we talking about that racial trauma, that's that feeling. It's that feeling. And so again, what you need to know about racial trauma is that it can be individualized. Things that you feel um, that we feel as a overall people, when you see things that happen to Breonna Taylor and Trayvon Martin, and how it impacts our race or whatever particular race that you're in. that's that trauma that we feel, even though it may not happen to us directly. When we saw that video, it really, a lot of people got impacted. Or anytime we hear about police brutality, we were impacted. It could be systematic racism. And a lot of times that's what you heard about with the Black Lives Matter when they were protesting, is that it was about, yeah, we can get individualized police officers, but what happens with the system? Looking at these laws and how it's impacting us as people. um, we have now with Georgia and their voting laws. And so that's what we call about systematic racism. What is it about the laws that's drawing a lot of people, especially people of color, into prison? Why is it that we kind of flippantly say, wow, these schools are just setting us up for failure? It's like a pipeline to the prison. Why are they going in there and at third grade testing Black young boys to see, to justify um, how much money they should get, or how much funding they should get to build new prisons, literally. And then we have the direct traumatic stressors, and those are things that happen to us directly. And so, not that something that you heard on social media or we saw on the news, but this is what you personalize, what we really feel. And like, the case I was just talking about, that's somebody, she directly uh, that had to deal with it. And then we have vicarious traumatic stressors. And so this is what we're talking about when we hear about other people, especially people of our race, dealing with um, stressors, or racism, or being injustice to, a lot of times now we hear in 2020 we had the word Karen, and so we were saying, yeah, look at Karen, and so people that felt privileged that they can just call the police on anything that we do. We can be sitting in the lobby in a hotel, um, at a hotel that we're staying at, and get called on. And so when we see these things, or you walking home from work and get pulled over and harassed by the police. And so when we see things like that, we had the story with Charlottesville, in Virginia, where people were marching. And so whenever time we see things like that, it makes us, we get that uneasy feeling. And then we have what we call the intergenerational stressors. These are stresses that passed on from one generation to another. So when people say, hey, nothing new happened under the sun, the same things that we saw with Black Lives Matter is the same things we saw like back in the 50s and the 60s with the Civil Rights Matter. And it's almost eerie that it looked the same. And because we have been dealing with this so generational, we almost like trying to prepare ourselves for uh, when we have those direct racial inner attacks. And so a lot of times they're saying, hey, we got to teach our young people when we get pulled over from the police how to act, if you're Black, how to, you have to put your hand, the things that you got to do to kind of survive the the race bias and things that's going on, just so that we can be prepared and pass that down on to our children. And what other race has to do that? So some of the causes is that we have exposure to stereotype. And so this is example when academics or textbooks are kind of watered down to make some race groups seem like they're better or worse in certain tasks. So they may build up and say, oh, look at Christopher Columbus. Oh, he was this great man. He discovered America. And that's where the story ends. And then we'll also look at racial groups where there was they don't talk about all the inventions that Black people brought to this country, or how much they had brought into this country, or how much Native Americans had contributed to the legal system. A lot of times we don't get to know, those are not written into the textbooks. And then we have personal safeties. Um, and so this is when a Latino person fears of being an undocumented immigrant, just because of they speak a different language. And a lot of them were under attack during 2020. Or of course, and then the personal safety where we fear the abuse by police, or we have to watch out for people who feel like they're privileged, that they can call the police on us. Witnessing members of a group receiving abuse. And so this could be real lives, it could be via the media, like when we see children in cages, immigrant children in cages. What does that say in your spirit? Or when we see an unarmed Black person being killed or being harassed by the police, what does that do to your own spirit? Because it's almost like, wow, I may not be there, but just to see those images kind of takes the breath out of you. It does something to your emotions. Or the racial abuse of loved ones. And this could be any attack on partners or parents or children when you see that your own family is being threatened. It could be direct exposure to racial abuse or discrimination. And so this is hearing racial stereotypes at work, or being or racial slurs, or I'm waiting for it. I know at any time one of my coworkers are going to say something just that's not going to sit right with me. Um, it could be others not taking experience of racism seriously. And so this may happen when people are questioned, if someone experiences was real. Were you really? Were you really followed around the store? I think you're just making those things up. I think you're blowing it out of proportion. I think you taking what I said out of content. If you say something, hey, you got locks in your hair, and that's not acceptable in the workplace, but my coworker can come in and wear purple hair, but I'm under a scrutiny. I'm under a whole different set of laws. Okay. So the list of racial trauma is unlimited. It can be historical trauma. It could be those microaggressions. It could be living with inequality. A lot of times these companies talk about diversity. Oh, we're going to diverse our company. Oh, we're going to do all this diverse. But you don't really hear them say, we're going to make it equal. You don't hear a lot of them saying, we're going to include equality in our system. And that's that systematic trauma, such as access to good, really to schools that are up to date and have up to date textbooks and equipment, and for medical treatment. All right. So who is affected? It affects anyone who is experiencing racism. And those experience, again, don't have to be direct, but just the fact that we know it's out there, it can rock us to our core. And so if you are, again, if you're Black, we might be on edge about the police. We might look at them. We may look at our white coworkers a little bit different, or how we're going to approach them. If you're Asian, reading accounts about hate crime against Asian people can be very traumatic. And if you really haven't experienced these things yourself, but just the impact of the information that's on social media or on the news, it can be very devastating. And so, we still are dealing with lynchings today. We still are dealing with racism today. And even though they may not be burning crosses in our front yards, but then there's threats on the internet against, hey, I'm going to stand my ground and shoot all the Black people. And you got these people who are doing these mass shootings nowadays. Affirmative action has been taken away. And so, and again, gentrification, they're just taking neighborhoods, and so instead of building up the neighborhoods with the people already there, they're moving people out of those neighborhoods and then building them up. And then the people cannot even afford to come back. And so housing, and just getting affordable housing, is getting is difficult. And so how does it show out? How does it affect us? When I say it rocks us to our core, sometimes it takes the breath out of us. And so it can affect your well-being. When we are dealing with racial trauma experience of, it's almost like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, especially if it's a direct experience of discrimination, especially when you're the one that's the target, or racial violence that you have dealt with. And so we may find ourselves avoiding anything that's going to remind you of that trauma. And so it can affect your life in many ways. It can cause a lot of intense anxiety or depression relating to the trauma. It can affect someone at any time. You're walking down the street and you hear somebody yelling, and that reminds you of how you were yelled at. It's kind of make you very anxious. Or I have to keep going back to that job, and the way I'm being treated at my job makes you very anxious. Or even depressed that I have no other choice at this matter. Feeling distracted by memories or thoughts of the trauma. Again, this experience may come from time to time, or it can be on a regular basis. Negative thoughts about yourself. I've been talked about so much by my peers or my supervisor, or when I go to the store, I'm being treated a certain way, so much that I'm starting to put myself down, or other people, or even, in the world. I'm thinking about, I don't like other people. I have a lot of distrust with other people. I don't trust them. And so, and I'm constantly worrying all the time about when's that next event's going to happen. Even if it did not happen to me directly, I'm worrying about, oh my God, what's the next news story? Who's the next one's going to get killed? Who's the next person that's going to get harassed? Who's the next Aubrey Abram when they are running and just jogging in their own neighborhood? What's next? And so it keeps us on edge. And so we are very, very sensitive. Um, and so we can notice that we're very easily startled, or we see police officers driving behind us. I don't know if you're a good cop, or if you're not a good cop. I don't know, and so it's one of those things that just keeps us on edge. And sometimes we are on edge so much that we normalize it. And then our suspicion is up. We take suspicion of social instruction, our schools. I'm going to make sure that my child's getting a good education and that you're treating them right. Or with different agencies, with government, we sometimes avoid eye contact, or we only trust people within our own social and family relationship network, because I don't trust what's the next thing that's going to happen. I don't trust if you're going to say something discriminatory out of your mouth. And again, we got this heightened fear sometimes after we see a mass shooting, or a shooting with the law enforcement, or we've seen immigrant children in cages, and we don't know when. So it keeps us with a heightened fear. Although now we don't like to show that fear, it may come out in anger. And again, we may start having nightmares or flashbacks. So something that reminds you of a traumatic racial event. It could be out of a podcast during a race-based hate crime, and it may just you start panicking, and you may start having nightmares about the event. For some people, they increase their substance use, so they start drinking more, or start smoking, just to be able to deal with the distress. And we again may be more aggressive in our own behaviors. I'm in my protective mode. I don't want anything happening to my family. And so I'm thinking about my safety and the safety of my loved ones. And then for some of us, we may reduce hope for the future. Man, it's never going to get any better. It's always going to be this. Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream. It may just be that. And so we are constantly concerned about being harmed with racist people. And especially when you have, when you're dealing with people in high power positions, that is continuing sending those messages that, so 2020, not only with the pandemic, but all of the different unrest in society, you just didn't know what was going to happen next. During the election, we actually had election stress because people were really stressed out how the outcome of the election was going to turn out. Um, and because there was a lot of double talk or tongue talking, some people are like, wait a minute, that don't sound right. Or some people just look right through it, can see right through it and say, nah, this is something, you're cooking up something to attack a certain group of people. So let's talk about these are things that we don't have any control over in a sense, but there are some coping skills that we do have control over to be able to deal with it. And so I wanted to leave you with this. So some of the coping skills that may help is the first and foremost to practice your own self-care. And that is the key. Making sure that you get up in the morning, make sure that you look at the things that you're grateful for. Racial or trauma can affect you both mentally and physically, because a lot of times we will resort to self-soothing behaviors. We'll start emotionally eating. And so it's important to prioritize those things like eating regularly and getting enough rest. The same goes for hobbies or activities that helps you feel refreshed. Getting involved in things that bring you joy, whether that's reading a book, doing an art project, or going for a hike. It also might be worth exploring some new boundaries about consuming your social media and your news. You may have to go on a detox for a month to say, you know what, let me cut out all the social media and the news, and let me just focus on just things in my physical world, in my environment, and making sure that I declutter, that my space is good so that I'm good. And just being able to step back, because sometimes all of the information, our news and our social media, sometimes it looks at the worst case scenario, and it can also bring a lot of distressing information. So sometimes going on a 30-day detox is a good thing. Being able to express your feelings of sadness, anger, rage, hopelessness, helplessness, grief, loss in a very safe manner. Talking to others through art. You can even do some artistic expression. Remember the rap back in the days, back in the 80s. If you listen to Naughty by Nature, I'm aging myself. If you listen to some of those rap groups, they were talking about their environment and what was going on in their neighborhood and what was going on. Um, and that's what they were rapping about. So if you ever hear some of that old, the ones way back in the day, Curtis Blow and all of them, Grandmaster Flash, all of them, that's what they were talking about, what was going on in their society, and through a safe expression. Writing on social media, exercising, just being able to not be silencing your voice and not internalizing it, but being able to talk about it. Um, and you also want to be able to maybe explore some activity opportunities. Sometimes you have to be the change agent. You're the one that's out there and saying, hey, let's get people out there to vote. Stacey Abrams is only one person, but together we can do what she does, and saying, yeah, we need to get out there and vote. We need to have a voice, because some of that systematic problem is people who make laws. And so being able to connect with people that engage in different forms of activism. It can be writing letters. It can be helping people get to the voting polls and making sure people get registered to vote. Um, Whatever, just being mindful of your energy, and being able to attend, actually show up at community meetings, see what's going on in your community, going to the eye care, connecting with people in your community who's gone through similar source of healing. Source of uh, uh, experiences, and being able to connect and say, oh, well, I'm not the only one that feels that way. Because sometimes we walk around and we um, don't talk about it. We just think it's just normal until we talk to other people who are like, oh, I felt that same way when I saw that on television, or I heard about that, or that happened to me as well. And so just being able to um, connect with people who've gone through similar things is just a source of healing. And then, allow yourself to rest, allow yourself to have peace, allow yourself to um, being able to, again, take care of yourself, which is a good key. And then be able to find professional support, going to your clergy, finding a really good therapist. Um, and sometimes that can be difficult, especially in your community, but there are podcasts, there are websites that you can go on, and just finding yourself a great therapist that you can sit through and being able to work through that trauma, and somebody that can connect with what you're going through. So that you feel like you're not having to, basically I guess some people say, man, I feel like I had to train my therapist because they didn't understand where I was coming from, you know? And so being able to go with somebody that you can really just like, yeah, I know you get me, because, I'm having it on the job. Or I had clients that, you know, um, when they were got a great apartment in a really good area, but then was being harassed by the the manager, and they wanted to know who were they, and and they were like, hey, you rented me out an apartment, or was being harassed by the neighbors. Even in 2020, even in this year, I remember my brother talking about being connected to your loved ones and making sure that they're safe. He was, when he lived in Orange Park, he was riding his bicycle in the neighborhood, and somebody drove by him and called him the N word, and he was kind of like shocked, about um, what, because he had just, well, he was in the military, and so he just got stationed here, and was like, it kind of, again, it just kind of resonates with you. And so those are those feelings when you're watching these things, or these things are happening to you. This is what it's called. It's called race-based trauma. Okay, I see we had some questions. I can't hear you.
Okay. All right. We have two questions.
Okay.
The first is by Lillian Smith. Well, both are by Lillian Smith. She writes, if you are guarded on how you treat other racial or ethnic groups, aren't you traumatizing that group as well?
Well, that's a good question. And I think, I don't know if it's one person can do that. If you were very guarded, it we can be traumatizing, all of us, because we really don't sit down and really get to know each other. And I think a lot of this comes from a point of, we really don't sit down. We have these labels and these ideations or idea of what that person is about, but we don't really sit down and say, who are you? I know what you look like, but who are you as a person? Just like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it's about your character. And we haven't gotten there yet. We still based on where you look a certain way, so you must be a certain way. We still are, fighting that angry Black woman or angry Black man syndrome. And I think what happens when we put our guard up because we are experiencing it so much, we don't know if the other person is traumatized or that traumatized that particular person because we don't talk about it. So it's really hard to say if we're putting up a guard and the other race is being traumatized, because we do get angry, we get fed up, we get full, especially when we keep seeing this on a constant everyday basis. And it's not just in this generation, it's a lot of generations that's, so you can go back to the 50s. I'm telling you, if you look at the march in the Civil Rights March in the 50s and the Black Lives March now, it is similar, it is eerie similar. Like there's no change, So we don't know. I mean, we can only assume if they are traumatized, but we don't know because we don't have that. We don't have the dialogue.
And there's one more question.
Okay.
Could the trauma be developed in the home when race relations are not properly presented to youth?
Definitely when we don't prepare, because that's the realness of the world. And so they can go to school, and nowadays we hear news stories about teachers and how they may treat students, or certain students. I just saw a news article the other day, and I don't watch a lot of news, but it was about a white teacher. She put her foot on, it was a little Black boy, and he's third grade, on his neck. He was on the ground, and took a picture of it and sent it to the parent. And so, like, sometimes if we're not teaching our children about I don't know what was going on in her mind. But if we're not teaching our children, this is life. This is the reality of it. And again, we get into that, hopefully we get into that protective mode, and we're not too naive to say, well, oh, they're too young. No, they need to know what's okay, what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, even in the schools nowadays. Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to thank you, and I'm going to turn it over now to Pastor Cotton to close. Again, we want to encourage everyone to share this and to participate in viewing this. This is incredible information, and I am appreciative to you for having the courage to walk us through it and to help us grow. So, Pastor Cotton.
Yeah, thank you so much. Wow, some great information. Let me ask you a question. As I was sitting here listening to your presentation, is there signs that we can identify a person who is having this type of traumatic experience? They may not be saying anything, maybe family members or friends around us, but is there something that we can see in them, or is there some type of signals that can go off that will help us understand that may be where they are?
Well, definitely, if you hear them complaining about maybe a particular person or workplace constantly all the time, they may start noticing that they're more angry because, like I said, we get full. You may see them start isolating. They may be more jumpy, more easily startled. So when you're walking up to them, I mean, it's almost like, just like with regular post-traumatic stress disorder or PTSD, they start having some of those same signs. You start seeing them maybe sad. You may start seeing them withdrawing, where they just can't take it anymore. Or you may notice that in the beginning, they're constantly complaining. Wow, every time I have to go to, man, I hate going to this job because they just treat me so bad. I don't seem like I can ever get ahead. Or that glass ceiling is much lower than mine, So things like that you listen out for. Or even with children, it's like, I cannot, that teacher, it always seemed like they picking on me, or they talked about my hair, or they talked about my dress, or they made comments about, um, my t-shirt, or they didn't like my Black Lives Matter, or how you're
Yeah.
being treated at school. So, I mean, even with our children, with our youth, um, and they may start, you may see them start withdrawing, or they're not talking to their friends, or things that they usually enjoy. They don't have any, they're like, oh, I'm good, or they don't want to talk on the phone. You start seeing that they're not themselves anymore. They're not engaging anymore.
Okay.
And so those are things that you want to look out for.
Thank you so much. Wonderful information. Listen, Dr. Wilson is available. Dr. Wilson is available. Self-care is to address your issues as well, and I know she will make her services available to you, and she will be, she can share with you. So if you want to speak to her personally, just reach out to the church, and we'll make sure that we bridge that connection. Or if you know someone that you're concerned about, and you want to talk to her about some of your concerns and some things that you can kind of do to help a friend or help a family member, reach out to the church, and we'll be more than happy to make sure that you get her information. Dr. Wilson, thank you so much for another wonderful Let's Talk.
Oh, thank you.
Tremendous information. Listen, we're here every fourth Tuesday at 7:30. Dr. Wilson has given us a wonderful lineup of topics, and you want to stay connected to Let's Talk each fourth Tuesday. Thank you so much, Dr. Wilson. We're praying for you. God bless you, and we'll be talking to you real soon. God bless everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.